All that was then needed was the seal of approval from the man himself, Jim Shepherd. He made the short journey from his home a couple of miles away, and it was a real pleasure to spend some time in his company. Jim, welcome to the show, first of all.
Thank you.
Great to see you. Now, you've just been listening to some of the recordings from the JSVB Legacy Band. What's your honest opinion?
Well, I'm very impressed. I'm not surprised with that lineup, but I am really impressed the way they've got the idiom of the jazz feel right, and generally just excellent.
Well, you mentioned the lineup, and we can't go far wrong when you've got the likes of Richard Marshall and Tom Hutchinson and Gary Curtin, Johnny Bates, Brett Baker, and the rest of the band. They were all absolutely terrific. But of course, all this was the JSVB Legacy, so the James Shepherd Versatile Brass, which for the 70s, the 80s and the 90s really was the groundbreaking 10-piece group that we all came to know and love. But just for the younger generation, because we're all getting on at that little bit now, Jim, tell us how the JSVB all started off.
Well, the idea came from Black Dyke, actually. We had an octet, and it comprised of most of the soloists in the band, solo euphonium, principal cornet, a couple from the front row, and solo horn. And I got the idea there, and I thought if we'd used the more difficult instruments like piccolo trumpet, and eventually Hickey got a mellophonium.
That's right.
And at first we used cornets, but it didn't work, and so we had to adapt to trumpets eventually. But it was all trial and error at first, but at the end, it worked out,
Well, didn't it just work out very well?
Yeah.
It's probably the most famous 10-piece ensemble in the world. So before you made the break from Black Dyke to form James Shepherd Versatile Brass, how many years had you been principal cornet at Black Dyke?
I was in my ninth year.
Ninth year.
I did 10 years, 63 to 73, yeah.
Which at that time was a huge commitment for a band like Black Dyke. You were under central contract, as I understand, and so to make that breakaway, that must have taken some doing, Jim.
Yeah, it was rather unfortunate. It was a bittersweet, as it happened. I was asked by Jeffrey Brand to perform the Ernest Tomlinson cornet concerto. He said he was commissioning a work and he'd like me to do it. And I said, obviously, I'd like Dyke to accompany me. And it went on for a number of months, and they couldn't decide because they didn't like doing mass band concerts. And they said that, well, they'd accompany me, but not play in the mass bands. It went on for a few months, and during this period, I was burning the candle at both ends, and I was really on a downer, I was having near nervous breakdown, I think, and it was, so I decided I didn't want to do it. And I can remember the night Roy Newsom said, we must put this thing to bed, we've got to decide tonight. And I stuck my hand up and said, Roy, I don't want to do it. And a couple of weeks later, I got a letter from Peter Wilson saying you'd like VB to do that spot,
Yeah.
So it put me in rather an awkward position. And I think Roy and Peter Lambert, who was the chairman of the band, who was, they decided that this wasn't on, and they gave ultimatums to players.
Right.
And I resigned, and the other players, the other three, Colin Aspinall, David Horsfield, and Harvey Whiteley, the percussion player, they decided they gave them the ultimatum: either play the contest with Dyke or play with VB.
Wow.
And that's how we came to leave. It's a bit bittersweet because we went on to good things, and obviously Philip McCann went, and was one of the best periods contesting that I've ever had.
It was.
So
It was, Jim. Well,
crumbled and,
as they say, when one door closes, another one opens.
Yeah.
And what a door it was that opened. From, I think, the very first few concerts that JSVB did, you gained such a reputation. And I think that was probably threefold. And tell me if I'm wrong on this, Jim, but I think the standard of the playing, the difference in the repertoire, and also that you put that element of entertainment into the concert, that it wasn't just 25 players sat round a stand playing old repertoire. It was something new, it was something different, it was groundbreaking, it was entertaining, and the audiences lapped it up and loved it.
Yeah, we did. Well, we knew we were onto something good, from the first concert in Upper Mills Civic Hall. And, the original team, we used a trumpet player called Pete Ferris, who was ex-Joe Loss, lead trumpet.
Yes.
And he was great with the jazz, but if he was accompanying delicate, he was like a laser beam coming through. But he didn't last long, did Pete, but he put some great ideas into our heads. We did expand the repertoire a bit, but it was hard going at first because we had no repertoire as such. And eventually it grew and grew, and then we got in touch. I worked for the West Riding of Yorkshire as a peripatetic brass teacher, and I met a guy called Ray Woodfield, who was ex-Marines, and he got demobbed and he'd come out of the army, and I met Ray, and I remember asking him one day, I said, why don't you do some arrangements, come and conduct the group, and then use the group arrangements, expand them for full band, eventually. And which he did. We used them for a year, and then he would arrange them for full band, and he expanded our repertoire enormously, During this pandemic, I think now was the time when possibly it'd be good to have some repertoire for smaller groups.
Well, this was the whole point of doing, of course, the JSVB Legacy program, that there's 100 new arrangements, some old which haven't been published, but the majority new arrangements to fit into a 10-piece ensemble, both wind ensemble and brass, that bands that can't get together now as a full band can now get together as a 10-piece. I hope that it's going to be the catalyst for more and more 10-piece playing, because it was an absolute art. There's no hiding place in a 10-piece.
There isn't.
And
I
think it makes your general band playing that much better, Jim.
Yeah, it does, yeah. I used to love quartet playing, which is much the same, every part, there's no hiding place.
That's a forgotten art as well.
The great days quartetting, but I think there is a place for a 10-piece repertoire.
Absolutely. Well, one of the pleasures I have as the proprietor of the British Bandsman, as well as having Brass Pass TV, is that I get to choose an award, the Herbert Whiteley Award, every year. Now, Herbert was a former editor of the British Bandsman, hugely influential in his time, and it became a tradition thereafter that every year whoever was in charge of the British Bandsman would award the Herbert Whiteley Award to somebody who has put a lifelong commitment and an effort and an input and a contribution to our fantastic brass banding movement. And I'm delighted, absolutely delighted and honoured to say that this year's recipient of the Herbert Whiteley is none other than my guest today, Jim Shepherd, for a lifetime of wonderful work with brass bands, with JSVB. I can't count how many students have gone on after having worked with yourself to great things. You're one of our characters, Jim. You're one of our legends, and I say that word very advisedly because it gets overused so much. And in normal times, I will be delighted to pick the trophy up and shake you warmly by the hand, but as we have to remain a COVID distance, I just need to point at the trophy and say very, very well deserved, Jim, and huge congratulations on being this year's winner.
Well, many thanks, Martin. It's It's a great pleasure to accept this award, this beautiful award. And I would like to thank you and your team for everything you've done. You've given the time to...
Oh, our absolute pleasure. Our absolute pleasure, Jim.
So I thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, of course, the one and only Jim Shepherd.